I barked at the deck boss who was coiling. I told him to take a hike or whatever. It was probably a lot more graphic than that.
The pitch-black water of the Bering Sea does not care about TV ratings, camera angles, or Hollywood endings. On February 25, 2026, 170 miles north of Dutch Harbor, the illusion between staged reality television and cold, lethal consequences shattered in an instant. When deckhand Todd Meadows vanished beneath the freezing waves aboard the Aleutian Lady, it triggered a desperate fight for survival, a Coast Guard investigation, and a silent tragedy the show could never script. The machine in the ice, behind the illusion of deadliest catch. One must first dismantle the illusion created by modern reality television to get how a routine fishing run transforms into a maritime nightmare. For over 2 decades, audiences around the globe have tuned in to witness the brutal, storm-battered world of Alaskan crab fishing. The heavy steel pots, the towering gray swells of the Bering Sea, and the rough-around-the-edges captains have become staples of primetime entertainment. Yet, beneath the slick editing, dramatic voiceovers, and pulse-pounding soundtracks lies an industry where the stakes are not measured in television ratings, but in physical survival. The crab fleet operates in one of the most hostile environments on the planet, where temperatures drop far below freezing, metal decks glaze over with invisible sheets of ice, and equipment weighs thousands of pounds. Into this high-stakes ecosystem stepped the FV Aleutian Lady, commanded by Captain Rick Shelford. The vessel was a veteran of the fleet, a rugged workhorse built to withstand the relentless pounding of the northern Pacific. To the millions watching at home, the Aleutian Lady represented the ultimate thrill of maritime adventure, a steel stage where hard-working men battled nature for their livelihood. But running a commercial crabbing operation under the constant gaze of camera crews creates a unique and subtle pressure. Every maneuver is documented, every deckhand's mistake is captured in high definition, and the relentless drive to fill the hold with valuable king crab or opilio crab must balance against the ticking clock of winter quotas. The crew on board operates on punishing sleep schedules, often working 18-hour shifts in blinding snow squalls where a single slip can mean immediate disaster. While viewers experience the drama from the warmth and safety of their living rooms, the men on the deck face an environment that offers zero margin for error. On the Aleutian Lady, the rhythm of the work was methodical, baiting the massive steel pots, launching them into the abyss, and hauling them back up through sub-zero winds. Every member of the crew played a specific, synchronized role in this industrial dance, where trust in one's shipmates was the only true safety net. For years, the production succeeded in turning this grueling labor into compelling narrative television, creating an unspoken agreement with the audience that no matter how terrifying the storm appeared on screen, everyone would ultimately return safely to port. However, nature does not follow a script, nor does it yield to television schedules. The machinery of commercial fishing moves with an unyielding momentum, driven by market demands, fuel costs, and short seasonal windows. When a boat leaves the harbor, it steps outside the protective boundary of modern civilization and enters a wilderness where help is often hours away. The Aleutian Lady was more than just a setting for a reality show. It was a high-pressure workplace operating on the absolute razor's edge of safety and human endurance. How could a seasoned crew operating on such a well-known vessel be caught entirely off guard by the silent strike of the Bering Sea? The unforgiving Bering Sea, 170 miles north of Dutch Harbor, the Bering Sea in late February is a world stripped of all warmth and mercy. On the morning of February 25, 2026, the FV Aleutian Lady surged through rolling gray swells, enveloped by sub-zero winds that turned ocean spray into immediate sheets of ice upon contact with the ship's heavy iron hull. Heavy weather in these northern latitudes is not merely a background inconvenience. It is an active physical weight that settles over every surface of the vessel, making every iron rung dangerously slippery, every thick synthetic rope stiff as wire, and every single footstep across the deck a calculated risk against disaster. Among the deckhands braving the freezing gale was 25-year-old Todd Meadows. Young, energetic, and deeply devoted to his family, Meadows was working the brutal deck not for internet fame or reality television stardom, but for the basics, urgent necessity of providing a stable future for his 3 young children back home. To work as a deckhand on a Bering Sea crabber requires a unique breed of physical resilience and mental toughness. It means hauling 700-pound steel pots off the launcher, managing thick coils of heavy line under heavy tension, and sorting through tons of thrashing catch while the deck pitches at violent 45-degree angles in absolute darkness. As the crew pushed through another grueling shift, the rhythm of the deck remained relentless. The production cameras recorded the action as usual, capturing the warm steam rising from wet oilskins, the steady roar of the diesel engine, and the mechanical screech of the hydraulic winches pulling pots from the ocean floor. In commercial crabbing, routine can become a dangerous sedative. When a crew repeats the same exhausting sequence thousands of times without incident, the human mind naturally adapts to the constant threat, treating catastrophic danger as just another background element of the daily workday. Yet on that cold February night, the razor-thin margin of safety vanished in a fraction of a second. The exact physical sequence of events on deck happened with terrifying, silent speed. A sudden lurch of the hull against an incoming rogue swell, a slick patch of deck ice hidden under foam, or a heavy trailing line catching an ankle in the dark. Before anyone on deck could shout a clear warning or throw a lifeline, Todd Meadows lost his footing and plunged off the edge of the vessel, disappearing over the high gunwale directly into the pitch-black 28-degree oceanic abyss below. The sudden shift from standard industrial labor to immediate life or death horror was instantaneous and absolute. Falling overboard in the Bering Sea is fundamentally different from falling into warm waters anywhere else on Earth. The human body undergoes immediate cold water shock, an involuntary neurological reaction that forces the lungs to gasp uncontrollably while blood rushes away from the extremities to protect core internal organs. In full rubber rain gear, heavy insulated boots, and thick ocean fleece layers, a fallen deckhand is dragged downward almost immediately by the crushing weight of their own saturated clothing in the freezing water. As the frantic, gut-wrenching shout of "Man overboard!" echoed across the freezing wind and cut through the deafening roar of the main engine, the crew of the Aleutian Lady snapped into a desperate emergency response, fully aware that their friend was now trapped in a terrifying race against a clock measured in mere minutes. Could the crew pull off a miraculous rescue in the dark before the brutal cold of the Bering Sea claimed another life? 10 minutes in the freeze, the fight for survival. The moment the alarm echoed across the wheelhouse, Captain Rick Shelford spun the helm, attempting to maneuver the massive steel hull of the Aleutian Lady back toward the exact coordinates where Todd Meadows had disappeared. Night operations on the Bering Sea present an extraordinary challenge during a man-overboard emergency. The ocean surface is an unending, chaotic field of black water and white-capped waves, rendering a submerged person almost invisible within seconds. Searchlights swept across the violent water, slicing through the driving, freezing spray as every crew member rushed to the rails, scanning the rolling seas for any sign of their floating shipmate. In water hovering near 28 degrees Fahrenheit, survival is not a matter of hours or even half hours. It is calculated in seconds. When a human body enters liquid at this temperature, hyperventilation is instant and uncontrolled, making it nearly impossible to prevent inhaling water. Within 3 to 5 minutes, neuromuscular dysfunction sets in, causing fingers to lose their grip and limbs to become completely unresponsive as the body desperately pulls oxygenated blood toward its core. Even a master swimmer becomes entirely incapacitated within a tiny window of exposure. On the deck of the Aleutian Lady, adrenaline erased hours of fatigue. The crew launched immediate emergency protocols, throwing life rings into the black water and positioning retrieval gear along the starboard rail. High-power spotlights finally locked onto a dark shape struggling in the heavy swell. Meadows was located, but getting a waterlogged body back aboard a pitching crab boat is an immense physical struggle. A fully clothed deckhand wearing ocean boots, heavy layers, and saturated oilskins can easily weigh upwards of 300 pounds when soaked, and the ocean current actively pulls the victim beneath the vessel's hull. With extraordinary effort, battling the pitch and roll of the vessel against the waves, the crew managed to secure Meadows and haul his motionless body back onto the steel deck. Roughly 10 agonizing minutes had elapsed since he hit the water. 10 minutes in sub-zero seawater is a terrifyingly long duration for the human nervous system. As soon as his body hit the deck, the crew immediately began life-saving procedures, stripping away his freezing, water-heavy gear and starting aggressive cardiopulmonary resuscitation in the middle of the howling wind. For tens of minutes, crewmates took turns pumping his chest and performing artificial respiration on the cold deck. Every second was filled with frantic calls over the radio equipment, coordinating emergency instructions with medical experts on shore and alerting nearby vessels and maritime rescue teams. The atmosphere aboard the Aleutian Lady transformed into a grueling battle against medical reality, as crew members worked tirelessly to coax a heartbeat back into a young father's body while the ship raced toward help. Despite their relentless efforts, the bitter truth of hypothermia and cold water submersion slowly settled over the deck. When a person stays submerged in Arctic waters past the threshold of respiratory arrest, resuscitation efforts become exponentially more difficult, even with immediate CPR. The crew refused to give up, continuing resuscitation attempts long past the point of physical exhaustion, holding on to hope that youth and determination could overcome the cold. Yet as the minutes dragged on without a response, the reality of what had just occurred began to sink in with crushing force. What happens to a tight-knit fishing vessel when the fight for life ends in absolute, deafening silence? The aftermath: grief, scrutiny, and the Coast Guard investigation. When resuscitation efforts were finally pronounced exhausted, a heavy, suffocating silence settled over the FV Aleutian Lady. The adrenaline that had fueled 10 minutes of frantic pulling and endless rounds of chest compressions evaporated, leaving behind a crew frozen in shock and profound grief. In the close-quarters world of commercial crabbing, a boat is not merely a workplace. It is a self-contained ecosystem where crewmates live, eat, and labor side by side for weeks at a time. Losing a brother on the deck is a psychological trauma that fundamentally fractures the spirit of a ship, transforming the vessel's routine operations into a silent wake. As the Aleutian Lady turned its bow away from the fishing grounds and began the long, somber voyage back toward Dutch Harbor, news of the tragedy sent shockwaves through the entire commercial fishing fleet. Captain Rick Shelford spoke for the devastated crew in a brief, heartbroken public statement, describing the event as the single most tragic day in the history of the Aleutian Lady. In port, flags were lowered, and the tight-knit maritime community rallied around the memory of Todd Meadows, quickly launching grassroots fundraising efforts that raised tens of thousands of dollars to provide long-term financial support for his 3 surviving young children. However, the tragedy immediately triggered a formal administrative mechanism that follows every fatal commercial maritime event. Upon reaching port, the vessel was met by investigators from the United States Coast Guard Marine Safety Unit. A formal marine casualty investigation was officially launched to dissect every element of the fatal night. Coast Guard officials began inspecting the physical vessel, examining the structural integrity of the gunnels, inspecting the deck layout, checking the operational status of safety gear, and reviewing the vessel's maintenance logs and stability records. Investigators conducted detailed, formal interviews with Captain Shelford, the crew members on deck, and the production staff present during the incident. Their goal was to construct a precise, minute-by-minute timeline. What were the exact wind and sea conditions? Was the deck properly de-iced prior to the shift? What specific task was Meadows performing at the moment he lost his footing? Were personal flotation devices or safety tethers being utilized in accordance with federal regulations, and if not, what deck conditions hindered their use? The investigation also introduced an unprecedented layer of complexity due to the presence of the Discovery Channel television crew. For the first time in a major Bering Sea fatality investigation, federal agents had access to high-definition video and audio recordings captured by professional camera equipment positioned across the boat. Every frame of raw footage recorded leading up to, during, and after the emergency became crucial evidence. The presence of these cameras subjected the vessel's operational culture, safety habits, and deck communication to an exhaustive level of federal scrutiny rarely seen in standard commercial fishing accidents. As investigators meticulously reviewed every piece of physical and digital evidence in Dutch Harbor, broader questions began to emerge about the delicate, high-tension balance between dangerous industrial work, media production, and human safety. Would the findings of the Federal Investigation Force a fundamental reckoning for how commercial fishing is conducted under the gaze of reality television? When the cameras stop rolling. The death of Todd Meadows forced an immediate and uncomfortable reckoning at the intersection of extreme labor, corporate entertainment, and public media consumption. For more than 20 years, Deadliest Catch had built a billion-dollar media empire by selling the genuine, unscripted peril of the Bering Sea to global audiences. Viewers tuned in precisely because the danger was real. Because the rogue waves were not generated in a studio, the freezing squalls were unscripted, and the physical exhaustion etched into the deckhands' faces was entirely authentic. Yet, when real-world peril culminates in the actual death of a 25-year-old father of 3, the delicate barrier between dramatic entertainment and human tragedy collapses entirely. In the immediate aftermath of the accident, public scrutiny turned heavily toward the production mechanics of maritime reality television. Dedicated fans and industry critics began re-examining past footage from previous seasons of the show, bringing renewed focus to prior incidents aboard the Aleutian Lady. Viewers pointed back to a tense 2023 season where safety concerns had surfaced on deck, leading to heated discussions about captain leadership, operational pacing, and the relentless pressure to deliver dramatic footage under brutal weather conditions. The tragedy reopened uncomfortable questions. Does the presence of constant camera crews create a subtle, unconscious pressure on captains and deckhands to push past traditional safety limits? Does the demand to hit seasonal crab quotas while keeping production schedules on track incentivize taking risks that seasoned mariners might otherwise avoid in sub-zero seas? While marine safety experts and television executives debated these broader systemic questions, the family of Todd Meadows faced a far more immediate and painful reality. In a dignified and firm public request, the Meadows family made it clear to the Discovery Channel and production producers that they did not want any footage of the fatal accident, the emergency rescue attempt, or the immediate frantic aftermath to be broadcast on television. Their plea highlighted a modern ethical dilemma unique to the era of reality TV: the profound difference between recording industrial labor for public education and commodifying the exact moments of a young man's death for television ratings. The television network and production company found themselves navigating an unprecedented ethical crossroads. While the show had previously documented non-fatal injuries, severe vessel breakdowns, and even the tragic passing of veteran captains due to natural health causes off deck, broadcasting the direct on-duty drowning of a young crew member crossed a line that deeply disturbed both the fishing fleet and the viewing public. Respecting the grief of the Meadows family and acknowledging the heavy gravity of the Coast Guard investigation, the network was forced to reconsider how, or even if, the Aleutian Lady's winter season could ever be framed for public broadcast. The true legacy of the FV Aleutian Lady in early 2026 is defined not by television storylines, dramatic sea battles, or box office ratings, but by the permanent agonizing void left in a family and a tight-knit maritime community. Todd Meadows was not a fictional character in a scripted drama. He was a dedicated father working one of the toughest jobs on Earth to secure a bright future for his 3 young children. His loss serves as a stark, solemn reminder that long after the television cameras are turned off, the microphone packs are unclipped, and the editing rooms go dark, the Bering Sea remains a relentless, unforgiving force, one that demands the ultimate price without remorse, leaving real families to carry the heavy weight of grief forever. True price of entertainment. The tragedy aboard the FV Aleutian Lady ultimately strips away the cinematic glamour of unscripted television, forcing us to confront an uncomfortable truth. For decades, audiences have treated the Bering Sea as a gladiatorial arena for primetime viewing, consuming extreme hazards as casual entertainment. But when the waves wash over the deck and a 25-year-old father never comes home, the thin boundary separating authentic labor from reality, entertainment dissolves completely. High ratings and thrilling camera angles can never obscure the harsh reality that commercial crabbing remains one of the world's most dangerous occupations. Todd Meadows' story stands as a solemn, permanent reminder of the true human price behind every pound of crab brought to shore, where every shift is a gamble against nature. If you found this breakdown insightful, please hit subscribe for more.